My mother-in-law, Helen, stood in my kitchen, handing my 6-year-old, Lily, a chocolate bar right before dinner. "Don't listen to your mom's silly rules," she said with a wink, as Lily giggled and my stomach twisted. This wasn't the first time she'd undermined me in front of my kids, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. Before I dive into this wild story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe, and stay tuned. I stood by the stove, stirring spaghetti, when Helen swooped in with that chocolate bar. Lily's eyes lit up, but I felt my authority slip away. "Helen, dinner's in 10 minutes, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She just shrugged, saying, "A little treat won't hurt." My husband, Tom, was at work, leaving me to deal with this alone. I wanted to scream but bit my tongue. The kids, Lily and 4-year-old Max, watched us like hawks. This wasn't new. Helen had been doing this since Lily was a toddler, always acting like my rules were suggestions. I felt like a guest in my own home. Later, as the kids ate, I caught Helen slipping Max a cookie. I had to do something, but confronting her felt like starting a war. After the kids went to bed, I sat Tom down. "Your mom's driving me nuts," I said, explaining the chocolate and cookie mess. He sighed, rubbing his eyes. "She's just trying to be a fun grandma," he said. I wanted to shake him. Fun. It felt like sabotage. I told him how it made me look weak in front of the kids. He promised to talk to her, but I could tell he didn't get it. I lay awake that night, replaying Helen's smirk. I wasn't just mad, she was making my kids doubt me. I needed a plan, but I didn't want to push Tom away. He loved his mom, and I didn't want to start a family feud. The next day, Helen invited herself to our park playdate. I pushed Max on the swing while Lily ran to the slide. Helen called out, "Lily, you don't need to wait your turn, go ahead." I froze. The other moms stared. Lily cut in front of another kid, and I had to pull her aside to explain why that was wrong. Helen just laughed it off, saying, "Kids should have fun." I felt my face burn. The other parents probably thought I was a pushover. I wanted to tell Helen to back off, but the kids were watching. I needed to stay calm, but it was getting harder every day. That night, bedtime was a mess. Helen was over again, helping while Tom worked late. I told the kids to brush their teeth, but Helen said, "Oh, they can skip it tonight." Lily and Max cheered, running off to play. I stood there, gripping the sink, feeling like I was losing control. I marched them back to the bathroom, but they whined, "Grandma said it's okay." I pulled Helen aside and said, "You can't keep doing this." She just smiled and said, "You're too strict, Sarah." I wanted to scream. Instead, I tucked the kids in, wondering how to fix this without making things worse. Sunday dinner at Helen's house was tense. She served the kids soda, which I never allow. "It's a special treat," she said, winking at Lily. I shot Tom a look, but he just shrugged. I tried to redirect the kids to water, but Helen said, "Let them enjoy it, Sarah." Max spilled his soda, and Helen laughed while I cleaned it up. Driving home, I told Tom we needed boundaries. He got defensive, saying, "She's just being a grandma." I felt alone. If Tom wouldn't back me up, how could I handle Helen? I needed a new approach, fast. I picked up Lily and Max from school, but Helen was already there, chatting with the teacher. She'd told Lily she could skip homework for a movie night at her place. I overheard and stepped in, saying, "Homework comes first." Helen rolled her eyes, muttering, "You're too hard on them." Lily pouted, and Max clung to Helen, making me feel like the bad guy. The teacher gave me a sympathetic look. In the car, I explained to the kids why homework mattered, but they kept saying, "Grandma says it's not a big deal." My hands gripped the steering wheel. I needed to talk to Helen alone, without the kids around, but I dreaded her brushing me off again. I invited Helen for coffee, hoping to talk things out. We sat at my kitchen table, and I started gently. "Helen, when you override my rules, it confuses the kids." She sipped her coffee and said, "I'm just giving them love, Sarah. You're too uptight." I clenched my fists under the table. I tried explaining how it hurt my parenting, but she laughed it off, saying, "You'll loosen up someday." I felt defeated as she left. Tom was no help. He said I was overreacting. I started wondering if I was the problem, but deep down, I knew I wasn't. I had to find a way to make Helen listen. Lily's 7th birthday was a disaster. I planned a simple party at home, but Helen showed up with a huge cake and piles of gifts I hadn't approved. "Grandma's treats are the best," she announced, handing out candy. The kids went wild, ignoring my schedule. When I tried to start games, Helen said, "Let them play freely." Parents stared, and I felt like a failure. After, I cleaned up while Helen played with the kids. Tom said, "It's just a party, Sarah." But it wasn't just that. Helen was taking over. I decided to set clear rules for her visits, even if it caused a fight. I wrote down rules for Helen. No treats without asking, no changing plans, respect my decisions. I showed Tom first, hoping for support. He frowned but nodded. I called Helen and read them to her. She got quiet, then said, "You're being ridiculous, Sarah." My heart sank, but I stood firm. "These are my kids, my rules," I said. She hung up, and I worried I'd gone too far. Tom was annoyed, saying I'd upset his mom. But for the first time, I felt a spark of control. I just hoped it wouldn't backfire. Helen didn't visit for a week after our call. The kids asked why Grandma wasn't coming, and I struggled to explain. I felt guilty but also relieved, no undermining for once. Then Helen texted Tom, saying she felt unwelcome. Tom was mad, blaming me for pushing her away. I tried to stay strong, but doubt crept in. One night, Lily cried, missing Grandma. I hugged her, promising we'd fix things. But how? I couldn't let Helen keep crossing lines, but I didn't want to cut her out. I needed a middle ground, fast. Helen finally came over after 2 weeks of silence. I was nervous but hoped my rules would stick. She brought puzzles for the kids, which I'd okayed. Things started okay. Lily and Max played happily. But then Helen whispered to Lily, "You can stay up late at my house." I overheard and stepped in, saying, "Bedtime's still 8, Helen." She sighed loudly, and Lily frowned. I felt the kids' eyes on me. Later, as I tucked them in, Max asked why I was mean to Grandma. My heart ached. I explained I just wanted clear rules, but I wasn't sure they understood. I needed Helen to respect me, but I didn't want the kids caught in the middle. Lily's parent-teacher conference. Her teacher mentioned Lily's been defiant, saying, "Grandma says I don't have to listen." I cringed, thanking the teacher for telling me. Driving home, I felt angry. Helen's words were spreading beyond our house. I told Tom, hoping he'd finally see the problem. He just said, "Talk to Mom again." That night, I lay awake, fuming. Helen wasn't just undermining me at home, she was affecting Lily's behavior at school. I decided to meet her somewhere neutral, like a cafe, to make her understand how serious this was. I just hoped she'd listen this time. I met Helen at a cafe, my stomach in knots. I got straight to the point. "Your comments are affecting Lily at school. She's not listening to her teacher." Helen looked surprised, then defensive. "I'm just being fun, Sarah. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I took a deep breath and said, "It's not nothing when it hurts my kids." She softened a bit but didn't apologize. "I'll try to be careful," she said finally. I wasn't sure I believed her, but it was a start. Driving home, I felt a mix of hope and doubt. Would she really change? Helen came over for dinner, and I watched her like a hawk. She followed my rules at first. No extra treats, no changing plans. But when Max spilled his milk, she said, "Don't worry, Sarah's too fussy about messes." I froze, then calmly said, "We clean up spills, Helen." She nodded but looked annoyed. The kids seemed confused. After dinner, I felt torn. Helen had tried, but her little jab still stung. I thanked her for coming, but I knew we weren't done. I needed to keep enforcing the rules, even if it made things awkward. Lily and Max started asking why Grandma and I weren't friends. I sat them down and explained, "I love Grandma, but we have different rules." Lily asked if Grandma was bad, and I said, "No, she just needs to follow Mommy's rules for you." Max hugged me, but Lily looked unsure. It broke my heart. That night, I told Tom the kids were confused. He finally seemed to get it and said he'd talk to Helen. I felt a flicker of hope, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. Helen had to change, or things
Tom
would stay
finally
messy. Agreed to talk to Helen alone. He went to her house while I stayed with the kids. When he came back, he looked drained. Mom says she'll try harder, but she thinks you're too strict, he said. I nodded, grateful he'd tried, but I wasn't holding my breath. Helen's promises felt empty before. Still, Tom's effort meant something. He was starting to see my side. At bedtime, Lily asked if Grandma was mad at me. I hugged her and said, "We're working things out." I hoped it was true. I needed Helen to follow through, or the kids would keep getting mixed signals. Helen offered to host a playdate for Lily and her friend. I was nervous but agreed, setting clear rules. No sweets, stick to my schedule. I dropped Lily off and stayed nearby, checking in. Helen followed the rules at first, but I caught her giving the kids ice cream. "It's just a little treat," she said when I confronted her. I took Lily home, frustrated. "Please respect my rules, Helen." She nodded but didn't seem sorry. I told Tom, and he sighed, promising to talk to her again. I was tired of repeating myself, but I couldn't give up now. I called a family meeting with Tom and Helen, no kids. I laid it out. "Helen, your actions make it hard for me to parent. We need to work together." Helen crossed her arms, saying, "I'm just giving them love." Tom jumped in, supporting me for once. "Mom, you need to follow Sarah's rules." Helen looked hurt but nodded. Driving home, Tom and I talked. He admitted he'd been avoiding the issue to keep peace. I felt relieved but worried. Would Helen really change? I hoped our talk was a turning point, but I wasn't sure yet. Helen came over for game night, and I braced myself. Surprisingly, she asked before giving the kids snacks. I said yes to fruit, and she stuck to it. When Max asked to stay up late, she looked at me first. "What does Mom say?" she asked. I nodded, and the kids went to bed on time. I felt a spark of hope. Later, I thanked Helen. She smiled and said, "I'm trying, Sarah." It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Tom squeezed my hand, and I felt we were finally on the same team. Maybe things could get better. A week later, Helen slipped up. She picked Max up from preschool and took him for ice cream without asking. He came home wired, saying, "Grandma says it's our secret." I was furious but stayed calm in front of Maximum. I called Helen and said, "No secrets with my kids." She apologized, saying she forgot, but I wasn't sure I believed her. I told Tom, and he was upset too. "I'll handle it," he said. I felt torn. Helen was trying, but these slip-ups hurt. I needed to trust her, but it was hard when she kept crossing lines. Tom sat Helen down at her house while I watched the kids. He told her how her actions were confusing Lily and Max and making my job harder. "Mom, you have to respect Sarah's rules," he said firmly. Helen got teary but nodded, promising to do better. Tom came home and told me everything. I felt a weight lift. Finally, he was fully on my side. That night, we talked about keeping Helen involved but with clear boundaries. I felt hopeful, but part of me worried she'd slip again. Still, Tom's support made me feel stronger. We were a team now, and that changed everything. Helen came over the next day, looking nervous. She sat me down and said, "Sarah, I'm sorry for undermining you. I just wanted the kids to love me." I was stunned. She'd never apologized before. I thanked her and said, "We want you in their lives, but my rules need to stick." She nodded, promising to try harder. At dinner, Helen asked before giving Max a cookie. I said yes, and the kids cheered. It felt like a small win. I wasn't sure if it would last, but for the first time, I felt like we were getting somewhere. Lily and Max started noticing the change. At the park, Helen let me handle snack time without interfering. Lily whispered, "Grandma's listening to you now." I smiled, feeling a spark of pride. Max still asked for extra treats, but Helen redirected him to me. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Later, I overheard Lily tell Max, "Mommy's the boss, but Grandma's fun too." My heart swelled. They were starting to understand. I thanked Helen quietly, and she squeezed my hand. Maybe we could find a balance after all. We planned a family picnic, and I gave Helen specific tasks to feel included. She brought fruit salad, as I asked, and didn't sneak treats. When Max wanted to skip lunch for ice cream, Helen said, "Ask Mommy." I said no, and he listened. For once, I felt in control, and Helen seemed okay with it. As we packed up, Tom hugged me and whispered, "You did it." I smiled, but I knew it took all of us. Helen was trying, and I was learning to stand firm. We weren't perfect, but we were better. Months later, things felt steady. Helen still loved spoiling the kids, but she checked with me first. Lily and Max listened better, knowing I was in charge. At a family dinner, Helen raised her glass and said, "To Sarah, a great mom." I blushed, surprised. Tom grinned, and the kids clapped. Driving home, I realized we'd found a balance. Helen was still grandma, but I was the parent. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I felt strong, and my kids knew I was their rock. If you've ever witnessed such a drama, comment below.